Hello everybody, and we've reached 1978. Some strange things happened this year, including Charles Chaplin's remains were stolen from, where was it? Cozier-sur-Veney, in Switzerland. Yeah, I didn't have to know he's buried in Switzerland, but there you go. Apparently they found his coffin a little while later, 15 kilometers from Lake Geneva. The first part of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was aired on BBC Radio 4. Annie Hall won Best Picture at the Academy Awards this year. The film Grease was released that year. I met one of the stars of that show actually, Kenickie. The Solomon Islands, Tuvalu and Dominica gained independence from the UK that year. Space Invaders, the video came. Where did it come from? Space Invaders, the video game, was launched by Taito Corporation. Millions of 10p's disappeared that year into the black hole of Space Invaders. Of the people who died that year, there was Jomo Kenyatta, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, the president of Kenya, the first president of independent Kenya. He was a big noise in that part of the world. Well respected, I believe. Never heard bad things about him, put it that way, when I lived in Uganda. Jim Jones also died, the man responsible for the mass suicide / murder of his followers in Jonestown in Guyana. Harvey Milk died. He was the first openly gay elected official in California, possibly America, but I say California. Well, it says California in Wikipedia. Anyway, Pope Paul VI died. He visited Uganda, I remember. And 33 days later, Pope John Paul I died as well. Keith Moon also died that year. Amongst the people who were born that year were Zoe Saldana, Ashton Kutcher, Nicole Scherzinger, Usher, Linda Park, Jodie Kidd, John Legend, and also born that year was Louise Brown. So who's she, you cry? She was the first IVF baby. Meanwhile in Uganda, things got pretty bad. That was the year that the war with Tanzania began, and I remember the first time, the first day that it actually happened. It was Saturday morning. I know it was Saturday morning because everybody was in the house. At the time we were staying with our Uncle Henry and their family, so it was a bit crowded house, but there you go. And it was a Saturday morning because the TV was on, so we were watching TV, and around 10:30, I could be wrong about the time, but close enough. That's when the Saturday morning cartoon started, and we heard this whooshing sound like a jet, flying over. And it wasn't rare for jet planes to fly over the city. MiGs mainly. Ugandan Air Force would do this quite often, and so we heard the sound, the whoosh, as it went over, and I went to the back window to have a look out, see if we could see it, and then suddenly there was this massive explosion, just like big shaking, and suddenly from being a fairly cheerful day, everything just turned dark, not literally, but and the war began. A few days later, the family and I went to the village to get out of the worst of the war, of the fighting, because a lot of the fighting it all started from southern Uganda and Tanzania and came up through into Kampala and continued, and the soldiers continued out into the east. And so we left to go to the village and on the trains, and because the trains weren't used that often, and so passenger cars there weren't any available at that time, and I think my dad and some other men suggested that we use the cattle trucks because there's a whole pile of them on a siding at the station, and unfortunately they weren't cleaned out or anything, so we all piled into these carts, and there was about a foot's worth of manure in them, so that was hard work. But a few hours later, after about 6 o'clock in the evening, we arrived in the village, and all was nice and calm, and we got out and we met some relatives. Someone had a car, I think it was a Honda Civic Estate, and they drove us to the the family home in the village, and I think we stayed there for a few months while the war was happening. And I remember quite clearly when the liberating soldiers came through the village. We all went up to the main road to see all these tanks and soldiers of the Tanzanian army come through, people cheering and getting a bit excited. And then I think a few years later we came back to the city, back home, and had to start school again. And because we'd missed so many months of school, school hours were extended by 2 hours. So instead of leaving school at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, we stayed until 6 p.m. So, schooling was taken seriously in Uganda. Still is, actually. And also that was the year that I had my 10th birthday.